Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sreshtha, Purposefully Passionate about Domestic Abuse Awareness. The intent of this series is to bring awareness in respect of mental and emotional abuse. Everyone knows what physical abuse is, but in respect of mental and emotional abuse, we are not easily able to identify flags or signs in respect of these types of abuse. And as such, we get into relationships not knowing what to look for. So the intent of this series is to bring awareness to those signs, to bring awareness in respect of how to cope in these situations, and if you have to, how to safely exit such a situation. In this series, we have survivors, we have professionals, and we have healers. And today I'm really excited to welcome one of my good friends who is a healer at heart. Her name is Douragh. I met Michelle in my corporate life, actually. She was a manager on the same team where I worked, and we shared the same work ethic, so we easily became friends. Eventually, I learned that she did Reiki, and I began going to her Reiki sessions, and our relationship just evolved into someone I could always go to for advice whenever I needed on a spiritual level. So welcome to our episodes, Michelle. I am so happy that you are here to share with us. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we begin.
Thank you very much, Sri, and I am very excited to be here. As you know, source is in everything. And when I say source, our God, it could be Yahweh, Buddha, Shiva, anywhere you relate to that divine mind. For today, I will probably use divine mind. So I want to say that I did jot down a few notes because I'm very passionate about this topic. This is how I live my life. My given name is Michelle. I also go by Shanti Devi, and that's the name that my yoga community knows me by. And to everyone else, love and motion. So let me tell you a little bit about my journey, which doesn't define me, but will give you a little insight into how I got to this point in my life. My journey began with early childhood trauma before I was one and continued into my childhood. I started to work at a bank when I was 16 years old. My parents were not working at the time, and the corporate world gave me some structure in my life. I continued my education at the bank, both formal and informal, and this helped me to assist many families in their financial planning or budgeting, because at the back of my mind, whatever I did, there was always this need to help others heal, to help others to know their value. I got married at the age of 24. I had 2 beautiful daughters and 5 miscarriages, which almost destroyed me. At that point in time, I realized that my work life was pretty much on track, but my personal life was unraveling fast. The key being that I had not dealt with my early trauma and programming, which had subconsciously influenced all my decisions and my relationships up until that point. This led to a complete emotional breakdown. But I would say it was the best thing that could have happened to me, because it led me to counseling and a part of healing and discovery. What I found was myself and the unlimited fountain of love that stands from me now. This also led me to yoga, and I eventually became a certified Hatha Yoga teacher with the International Yoga Federation. So I teach yoga. During my teacher training, I was also attuned as a Reiki 2-level master, and I do Reiki sessions, as she knows. And with this transmutation, I developed the gifts of clairaudience and clairsentience. I believe that we all have gifts, and we just need to nurture them. We need to allow them to work in our lives. Through coaching, I help others to connect with their own inner being and that divine mind within. And it is through this connection that we can heal ourselves, change our programming, and create new stories about ourselves. I believe that in order to become who we truly are, we must become love.
Yes, wow, Mish, it's so interesting. Your story kind of summarizes this series, right? You know, you're speaking about early childhood trauma. Whatever happens in our childhood informs how we behave into adulthood and the things we accept, which are things that we have spoken about in this series. But you also have spoken about learning to deal with that and move past that, finding tools, and then becoming your own beautiful you as you are and helping other persons. And Misha is actually the person who taught me how to heal and love through compassion. The first time she said it to me, to send love and light to someone who was hurting me, I had no idea how in the world to do that. But through practicing it, I learned how to do it. And that is actually the tagline for this series, is healing through compassion. So I'm so happy that you shared your story. It ties in everything so nicely. And I would ask you to speak now on that mindful connection that you spoke about. What is mindful connection?
So mindful connection is that living in that constant state of awareness, that divine mind, that infinite intelligence always has its gaze upon you, flowing love to and through you. And, just saying that, I feel so lovable. Every time I think about it, sometimes I blush when I say that to myself, or, I say it to someone. Mindful connection is about you. It's about you, your inner being, and divine mind, God. It is that relationship, that connection. It's not about you and anybody else. So when you begin to live with that mindful connection, transmutation takes place. Not transformation on the surface level, because we could transform ourselves just by changing our hairstyle, changing the way we dress. But when we use the word transmutation, we are talking about a complete change inside and outside. And it's almost as though you're creating a new you. And so even when I was speaking about my little history there just now, I feel like I'm talking about somebody else, because I'm a completely reborn new person in my life right now. To begin that process, however, we must understand who we think we are. And I say who we think we are because from the moment we are born, we are given a name, a religion, we adopt the values and perspectives of our family. We pretty much are programmed by our environment and the people around us. And we go into adult relationships with that programming. Now, if you were brought up in a loving home where you were taught there's something so much greater than yourself that is always present, wonderful. But some of us were brought up in homes where we may have been abused, we were not loved, shown love. And so there's this undermining of, I don't deserve to be loved, or I'm not worthy enough. And some of us may have been brought up in families where we were shown love, but we were not given that foundation that there's always something greater at work here, divine mind, consciousness. So each type of programming informs who we think we are, how we value ourselves, our wholeness, our worthiness, whether we have a connection with God, divine mind, and, we enter into relationships with that programming. And that's how we perceive ourselves and the people that we are with. So when you talked about, entering into abusive relationships without understanding or knowing red flags, sometimes we can't, because we think that is normal behavior, or that is a normal way of being treated. And so we accept it because we think that's what we deserve.
Yes, that is so true. And that is really how we get into these relationships, because the perpetrator behavior is learned in the childhood environment. We see our parents acting like that and we think, well, this is normal. This is how it is supposed to be. And some persons move into relationships and don't realize that, no, something is wrong with this behavior, and don't learn or decide to change it. And then they feel stuck, depending on your religious values, depending on what you believe. Some persons don't believe you could ever exit a marriage. Once your marriage, that is it. Or some persons are pressured by society, thinking that, well, the nuclear family is the only way to bring up children in a loving way, which is actually not correct statistically, but people believe that, and they stay in these relationships for these reasons. So that is why I'm so glad that you are here to talk about ways in which we can change how we think to hopefully get us to move past not so good things in our life. So how can we achieve this mindful connection?
With anything that requires mindfulness, it means that we have to be in the present moment. So we can achieve that one-pointed focus on many things. The difference with mindful connection is that when we are present in the moment, we are always aware of that divine love flowing to us and through us. So there is nothing, no person, situation, or thing can make us less in the eyes of God. And so it is easier for us to understand and accept that flow of love constantly. It's almost as though being in love is one of the sweetest things that could happen to you, because of course you are the object of somebody's attention until it turns otherwise. But just imagine having the object of attention of Source, the divine creator, on you at all times. When you think of that, it would really blow your mind sometimes. But when we experience that, we feel whole, we feel worthy, we feel abundant, we feel lovable. And these are the words that we want to use when we are speaking to ourselves and about ourselves. So when we think about a couple of the activities that naturally bring us into the present moment, I would say it's like when you're bathing a baby, you're very present because you don't want to drop the child in the tub, so you're very present in that activity. While making love, we are very present because we are only focused on the person that we with, on making that person feel good and on feeling good. And that's when we feel most alive, when we're in the present moment.
Wow, Mish, you always speak so profoundly. So I love when you say no person, situation, or thing can make you less. I may be saying it a little bit differently, in the eyes of God. And this is so true. We have to believe that we have everything in ourselves to be everything that we want to be, and not allow or give other persons the power to erode our self-worth or to batter us, which is the term in abuse. So I'm going to ask you, what distracts us from being present? Because there are a lot of times it's like buying all the vegetables and you put it in the fridge. We intend to eat healthily, and then all the vegetables rot in the fridge because you're busy going about your weekend, your day, and whatever you have to do. So what are the things in terms of mindfulness that distracts us from being present?
Well, when I ask most people that question myself, they say, life, Michelle, life, and I love that example of the vegetables, because I myself have the best of intentions and I buy all this stuff and then it just stays in the fridge and I'm like, oh, Michelle, but really it is our thoughts that distract us from being present. And, we can manage our thoughts by practicing just a few things. But before we get into that, I want to look at some of the things that may occupy our thoughts and prevent us from being present in abusive relationships or situations. And, I am divorced, and I think that a lot of the reasons, or maybe one of the main reasons my marriage failed, was a lack of communication and me not dealing with my early trauma. But I did have some of these thoughts, right? And, it's like, I deserve this, or he just loves me too much. That is a great excuse we give to ourselves, so people who put us down. I'm not good enough, or what can I do to make him, or what can I do to not make him angry, or how can I make myself small, or I'm so afraid, or even I'm ugly, or no one can help me, no one listens to me. And, when we are in relationships where we have someone constantly undermining our value and feeding us these negative affirmations about ourselves, that's the thoughts that we have, because we share energy and you're in the same space with the person. So these are the things that will occupy your mind. So how do we negate those thoughts? We need to understand that in abusive relationships, we're in constant fight or flight mode, triggering our sympathetic nervous system. And when our bodies are in that state, we're going to get a little scientific for a little bit here. We are not in healing mode. And that's why we can't seem to get out of this little hole that we're in, because we can't seem to heal our bodies, our minds, our emotions, right? This response is in direct relation to how safe we feel. Our loss of personal power. We feel that we have no control over the decisions being made in our lives. We are in a constant state of fear or anxiety or even lethargy or depression, right? A constant state of that. It's an inner struggle, because sometimes, as I said, we do have that good programming and we know we deserve better, but we don't know how to get out of that situation. With mindful connection, this is where our reprogramming begins. This is where we create new stories for ourselves. Regardless of the situation we are in, the only person that has control of our thoughts and our stories that we tell ourselves is us. So let's look at a few ways that we could, a few practices that we could use to get into that, or to stay into that and stay in that mindful state, right? To manage our thoughts. I'll start with the simplest one first, and it is something that I do. And the first one I call body scans and smiling. So sometimes I sit, close my eyes, and I just do a little scan of my body from the crown of my head all the way down to the soles of my feet. And as I do it, I smile. It's like I'm sending love to myself. And wherever I feel any kind of discomfort or hurt, I just send love to that area. Smiling is very important when we do it, because when you smile, of course, it's like you're acknowledging to yourself, I am beautiful. My body is beautiful. I feel good in my body. And of course, staying in that awareness as you do it, of that love flowing to you, that divine love, that attention, that, that adoration, that connection is always with you. Chanting or singing. Sometimes you don't have to be sitting in lotus or anything. You could just be doing your housework or talking to your children, or when I say, carrying them for a walk and you just humming, chanting or singing some wonderful little hymn or anything that makes you feel good, that uplifts you. Meditation or centering prayer. I use them interchangeably because different religions use them with say meditation or centering prayer. Centering prayer or meditation is just about holding that space for yourself. And I call that my time out with God. I call that my time to just sit and just feel that abundance around me. And what I would suggest, and meditation is not about quieting your mind or having no thoughts, because that's impossible. Our mind is constantly doing something. So I would say, to just sit, if you want to practice this, close your eyes and just notice your breath and listen to something mundane. It might be an AC or a fan or something. And as you do that, just bring awareness to that space around you and just create that space for you and God to sit in. And just allow whatever you need to allow. Gratitude is a wonderful way, and again, as we stay in that awareness, we are constantly saying, as I said, I go through my day and sometimes I blush because I'm like, gosh, all this love, just thank you so much. And, for little things as well, little wins, or even if something doesn't go right, I say to myself, even though this is not working out for me right now, that's okay, because help is always on the way. I know there are always guides and angels around me, around all of us. Journaling is very good. You start to say by how you feel, and you just talk it through with yourself, with your own inner being, with your source. And you'd be surprised by the end of that conversation you have journaling, you would have gotten a solution or some type of release, or some, you'll feel good at the end of it because you would have released whatever it is you were holding. That's if you have somebody wonderful like Sreshtha to talk to, then that's a good thing to do. But I would say if you're going to anybody to talk to anybody, make sure it's somebody that would uplift you, somebody who's in a good space themselves. We have breathwork because we hold a lot of tension in our stomachs. We hold a lot of angst in our stomachs. So if you just want to do some breathwork, again, close your eyes and just inhale for a count of 8, exhale for a count of 8. And as you do so, relax your stomach. Just touch your tongue to the roof of your mouth and just relax your stomach. Visualize it being relaxing. And as you breathe in and out, you're breathing it abdominally, which means when you inhale, your tummy expands. And as you exhale, your tummy contracts. And the last one I would like to share, these are just some that, I do in, I mightn't do all one day. I will do different ones on different days, depending on what's happening. It's affirmations, but affirmations that create a shift in us. Of course, if things are not going good and, we just come out of an argument or you've just been told something demeaning or undermining, you're not going to say, I am beautiful and I am love, because it's not going to resonate with you. Okay. So you want to use an affirmation that resonates with you. So if you're coming out of a situation like that, you might say, even though I don't feel good about what was just said to me, I know Source loves me. I know love is always flowing to me and through me. And you will notice a little shift. And then as you go along, you create new affirmations as you go along, and you will notice a definite shift in your thinking, in how you view yourself, and in how you begin to view your relationships, all the relationships around you. I just want to say that as we practice these and we stay in that awareness, understand that we cannot control how another person behaves or what they think, but we can control how we see ourselves and how we feel. Creating a healthy mindset or a mental space for ourselves can be as simple as caring about how we feel. So again, if you're in a situation where you're being abused or undermined, instead of relating to what the person is saying to you, you need to love and care about how you feel enough to practice these, to practice mindful connection, because then you will be creating your own stories for yourself. Remember that no one, no situation, nothing can make you less in the eyes of God. You are born abundant. You are born lovable. And that's how you speak to yourself. Sometimes I wake up and I say, my goal today is to just feel good.
Yeah,
and that's it.
Yes, that's an intense for the day. So you spoke about so much. I will try to touch on what I remember. What the first thing that struck me is talking about how we are sympathetic, or how those situations trigger that part in our brain that bears sympathy. And that is so real in these types of situations, because the person does so much bad or self-worth eroding things, but somehow we still feel sad and we still feel sympathetic and we still want to help them. I have had friends who have left domestically abusive relationships and felt sorry for the person after still carrying breakfast for them and doing all sorts of things for them. And it's so important to understand the scientific reasons behind why some of these things occur. And I love that you gave so many tools. I mean, I could even keep track of all of them. But the first one I absolutely loved, with just going through your body and sending love to whichever piece of your body needs it. And that so connects us again with our soul, to me. That's my personal opinion. And then you spoke about journaling, which ironically, one of the survivors spoke about in episode 5. She spoke about how she just wanted to die. And she started journaling really, really bad things about herself. And eventually all those things turned into prayers, and her journal turned into hope of life. So, some of the tools that you're sharing, survivors have actually shared that they used it and have been able to move from victim to survivor, which is what we want for persons in these situations. And I love how you talk about how abundantly we are born, because that is the truth. We are born with everything we need to be. But unfortunately, our environment erodes us, or programs us, as you said in the beginning, to believe different things. And the good thing is we have the power to change it. One last thing I wanted to ask you, Mish, is letting go of these persons who hurt us. You always speak to me about sending love to that person or being compassionate to that person. And I find that is so important in our journey, not to be angry with whoever did us wrong, because they are going through their own journey. So I'm going to just ask if you just could speak a little bit about the importance of letting go and letting that person go on their own journey with compassion and love.
So the reason I am where I am today is because I was able to forgive everyone that may have abused or hurt me in my life. And, I have the saying that unconditional love is not for the faint of heart. But Without it, we cannot transform ourselves. Without it, we cannot become that energy that created us, that love that created us. We can't allow that flow in our lives. So even though forgiving doesn't mean you release the person of what they've done, right? Forgiveness is about you. You know, we always hear that phrase, but it is truly about you. It's about you releasing that energy. You know, we speak about when someone hurts you, you know, and you hold them in mind, what you're doing is that person is still taking power from you, right? So in order for us to release any kind of negative energy around that situation, we need to forgive that person. We need to view that person with compassion and love. Doing so does not mean keeping that person in your life. It means that you could send all the love and light you want to them with healthy boundaries, understanding that that is their part and they will find their way eventually, but you are not responsible for them healing, finding their way, or anything like that. You are responsible for you, your energy, your healing, your love. And even though I'm saying that, the compassion is where you send love and light to them, you pray for them. You know, you wouldn't go about doing anything that would cause them harm or hurt. Create a safe space and distance from them, but don't hold them in mind. You have to release that energy. You have to release that anger or fear. And some of those things, I lived in a state where I was pretty much, I felt very intimidated for about 2 years in my life after my divorce. But when I let that go, when I started to practice mindful connection and understand where my strength, my courage, my wholeness, where all of those came from, it was easier for me to let that go. Of course, Sri, in some situations, some people will need to be a little bit more careful because they have to not only set healthy boundaries, but they have to probably get what they call it, to keep the person away from you, from harming you physically, a protection order to keep them from harming you physically. But anything you do in this life, you have to do it with love. And I know it sounds hard, but when I say with love, I don't mean accepting behaviors that are not good. I mean creating healthy boundaries, because the love starts with the connection within you and your connection with your source, your divine mind.
Yeah, you're such a wealth of information and knowledge. I always just want to soak up everything you are saying, and just how you speak to how we should live life, you know, being that pure source of love and not accepting certain behaviors, but still being kind to those who hurt us, because they as well are going through their own journey and they have things to learn. And it is important for us to not to enable them, because as you once told me, that stops them from their growth on their own spiritual path.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much, Mish. You shared so much in such a short space of time and really made a difference and introduced new things into the series. I'm really grateful for you taking your time to contribute and spending time with us. And I'm just going to ask if you have any closing remarks before we end.
What would I say to you? I would say to you that it is well worth it, because you do feel like a new person. And when you experience that abundant love daily in your life, you literally bring heaven to earth. And that's what this life is about, I think. So Shri, I want to thank you again for bringing me onto this series. You know, I'm very shy, not a public person at all. So I just want to say thank you very much. And I want to tell everybody, namaste. I absolutely admire and love the divine in you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Mish. Every time I speak with you, I honestly just get a takeaway and I'm like, wow, and I have to sit on this and kind of work out how am I going to incorporate this, because it's such like a valuable gem that you speak, valuable gems that you speak every single time I speak to you. So again, I'm really grateful. Guys, take her messages. I probably started working with Mish spiritually in 2017, and I really for myself have transformed in who I am spiritually, just in the things I believe and how I feel about myself. I actually feel abundantly filled with love. And part of that is because the little gems she tells me, I really take it and I try to practice it. So for those of you in abusive situations, at the end of the episode, I have a list of resources that you can access for varying countries. I also encourage therapy, which is something Michelle spoke about. Therapy would help us deal with the situation we are in and give us coping mechanisms to help us through these situations. Thanks again, everybody, for joining in, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.